All right, folks, we need to talk about this. President Biden has made a few game-changing moves over the past month to essentially Trump-proof the government before this incoming administration takes office. And the good thing is, Biden is working to protect our courts, our climate, our institutions, and much more by using nearly irreversible legal mechanisms that Trump can't just undo on day one. Because when Trump took office in 2017, we immediately were pulled out of the Paris Climate Accord. A lot of the EPA protections that were enacted during Obama's term were immediately revoked. And the question is, can we Trump-proof the environment so that he's not able to just undo this all on day one? And the answer seems to be partially yes. So I want to run down how Biden just banned new offshore drilling along most of the U.S. coastline, and this order will protect some 625 acres of ocean along America's Atlantic and Pacific coasts, the Gulf of Mexico, and Alaska's Bering Sea. Make sure you drop a like and drop some blue hearts in the comment section so you can boost this pro-democracy message. Before I jump into the climate piece, let's talk about the courts. Because just a few weeks back, Biden vetoed a bill that would add 63 new federal judges over the next decade because this would allow Trump to appoint a lot of judges, entrench his own power, and our courts would be filled with far-right stooges who are working against the environment, working against our elections, and much more. President Joe Biden vetoed a bipartisan bill that would add 63 new federal judges over the next decade, explaining that the bill, quote, fails to resolve key questions. Now, this bill was supposed to be bipartisan. I mean, both sides did vote on it, but then Biden, at the very last minute, vetoed the bill because he realized this was a Republican con. It was a Republican scheme to delay, and then right when Trump gets into office, he's the one that is able to appoint all of the judges. For example, do you remember when Obama tried to appoint Merrick Garland as the Supreme Court justice, and Republicans said, no, you can't do this when there is less than a year until the new election. You can't do this. Wait for the people to vote. But then, when Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, like 2 months before the election, Trump was able to replace her immediately. And this just shows the hypocrisy of Republicans, how they will delay, lie, and obstruct just to entrench their power. So Biden vetoing this bill was a solid move, and that brings us on to what he did overnight while all of us were sleeping. He banned new offshore drilling along most of the U.S. coastline, and this order will again protect 625 million acres of ocean along America's Atlantic and Pacific coast, the Gulf of Mexico, Alaska's Bering Sea. It'll protect it from, quote, environmental and economic risks and harms, the White House said in a statement announcing the move. It's also an attempt to protect Biden's climate legacy from the energy policy set to be pursued by Republicans and President-elect Donald Trump's energy policy, which annoys me because I've been to all of these Trump rallies, and all of these supporters are convinced that right now, U.S. drilling and energy production is at an all-time low, when it's the exact opposite. We have been reaching new heights every single month in terms of drilling. We are currently drilling more oil than we ever have in the history of the United States, the history of any country, yet Trump ran on drill, baby, drill because it's a simple, repeatable slogan. Democrats need to start embracing more of these simple slogans rather than digging into statistics, but that's another conversation. When it comes to climate policy in particular, Biden and Trump couldn't be farther apart. Biden's actions reflect this long-term vision of safeguarding coastlines, protecting the environment, tackling the climate crisis head-on, and transitioning to clean energy. And Trump's first term and his new term, they just continue to double down on fossil fuel expansion. They also deny the very existence of climate change, or at the very least, downplay it to an extent where they just don't care at all. So Biden's decision to invoke this 1953 law is perfect because let me just explain how it's really hard for Trump to reverse. So Biden will use an obscure provision of the 1953 Outer Continental Shelf Lands Act, which gives the president the power to indefinitely withdraw unleased lands from the Outer Continental Shelf. Indefinitely is the key word there, because as this article explains, while former President Barack Obama used the same act in 2016 to protect 119 million acres of land, Monday's move is much larger. Of course, 119 million acres can't even touch the 625 million acres that Biden just protected. And also, it's a significant victory for environmental groups that have long argued further drilling is contradictory to the U.S. government's stated goal of slashing emissions that lead to climate change. Last year was the hottest year in recorded history. Quote, drilling off these coasts could cause irreversible damage to places we hold dear and is unnecessary to meet our nation's energy needs. It is not worth the risk. Biden then said, as the climate crisis continues to threaten communities across this country and we are transitioning to a clean energy economy, now is a time to protect these coasts for our children and grandchildren. And I can't remember what politician said this, but I was watching a political debate recently, and they reframed the entire climate change issue and said that we need to stop being so doom and gloom about it. Yes, climate change is terrifying, but the messaging that we're using around climate change is not effective when we're constantly trying to scare people and say, hey, in 10 years, this will happen, this will happen. What we need to do is show that climate change is actually an economic opportunity for America to further entrench our dominance on the world stage. So if we can be the leader in green energy, if we can be the leader in transitioning to more clean energy, and if we can find a way for this to economically benefit us, which we can, we have a lot of clever people in our country and across the globe that can find ways to make sure that this is economically beneficial while also protecting the environment. So just to bring it back, we need to reframe it from something that we all need to be panicking about, which even if that's true, even if it is scary, the framing we need to use, the Democratic Party's messaging should be the economic opportunity of it. We shouldn't talk about the jobs that will be lost by climate change. We should talk about the jobs that can be gained by battling climate change. But to return to this article, Biden's decision takes the total area of ocean he has protected to 670 million acres, higher than any other president, and could frustrate Trump's plans to gain an economic boost from doubling down on increased oil and gas production he oversaw in his first administration. Now, during his first admin, Trump used an executive order in an attempt to overturn Obama's decision to invoke the OCSLA during the final months of his presidency, but that decision was struck down by the courts. That means it could take an act of Congress to reverse Monday's announcement by the Biden admin. And of course, Trump does have Congress wrapped around his finger right now, but they have a very slim margin. The week after Trump won the 2024 presidential election, Trump named Liberty Energy CEO Chris Wright as his pick to lead the Department of Energy. And Biden's decision, again, to invoke the 1953 OCSLA Act is honestly an example of playing smart politics. A lot of people think this is a futile move, it's largely symbolic, but no. The Lands Act, which allows presidents to withdraw areas from mineral leasing and drilling, doesn't grant the new president the legal authority to overturn prior bans via executive order. You'd have to go through the courts, you'd have to go through Congress, maybe even the Supreme Court, which, to be fair, the Supreme Court is wrapped around Trump's finger as well, but this makes it harder. This makes it much harder, and you can't just do this on day one. Now, Chris Wright, Trump's pick for the Department of Energy, has previously written on the need for more fossil fuel production to lift people out of poverty, and in a video posted to his LinkedIn profile 2 years ago in 2023, he said that, quote, "There is no climate crisis, and we're not in the midst of energy transition either." Really? There's no climate crisis? I'm never one to freak people out and say that in 10 years we're going to be at this point or this point, but there's absolutely truth to the idea that if we don't take action over the next 5 to 10 years, this will be beyond the point of return. So the idea that there's no climate crisis is absolutely absurd. It's terrifying, and he doesn't have any long-term thinking. He's just thinking, how rich can I get right now, even if it comes at a certain cost to my kids or grandkids or my future generations. So while many of the protected areas have not tended to draw much interest from the energy industry, the Biden admin said the ban would cover the entire U.S. Atlantic coast and the eastern Gulf of Mexico. And of course, just to zoom out really quickly, Biden's use of this Lands Act is a very deliberate attempt to lock in climate protections. There's a difference between having a policy that Trump's able to overturn on day one and being able to lock something in that is difficult to reverse. By the time Trump or any future Republican admin could untangle this, it's likely that years and years have passed, potentially giving clean energy projects more time to take root and demonstrating the economic benefits of Biden's policies, the economic benefits of fighting climate change. Like I said earlier, we should reframe this. People shouldn't be scared of losing their jobs because of climate change. We need to talk about the jobs that can be created by taking a stance and being a world leader in fighting climate change. So just to talk about why Trump's fossil fuel playbook is losing steam and why it's a losing plan, his first term highlighted his reliance on fossil fuel expansion as a political strategy, but now Biden kind of blocked that. He kind of rug pulled Trump about 2 weeks before Trump takes office, and now Trump is left clinging on to this outdated model that prioritizes short-term gains for the fossil fuel industry over long-term sustainability, and his administration's rhetoric about this war on energy is honestly largely neutered by what Biden just did. So I'll leave it at that. I'll continue covering the moves that Biden makes to Trump-proof the government. And I don't want to give you guys false hope. Biden isn't able to completely rewire the government, so Trump and his stooges can't do anything. He's just taking small, actionable steps to protect our courts, to make sure Trump can't appoint new federal judges, to entrench some of the climate policies that he's enacted. These are all small moves that will help things like the climate, things like the courts, but there's still a lot of room for Trump and his minions to erode our democratic principles. I'll leave it at that. Drop a like, subscribe if you appreciated this video. I appreciate you guys. I'll see you in the next video. Love you. Peace out.